Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Lauren Izo. Coming up in this edition, Israeli forces arrest the wife and son of a suspected terrorist on the run after a West Bank shooting. Getting by with a little help from friends. Israel delivers medical aid to India as COVID-19 ravages the country's health system. And this Israelis using military combat equipment in a way you would never expect. A manhunt continues for the perpetrator of a drive-by shooting attack that wounded 3 yeshiva students at the Tapuach Junction in the West Bank. In the last hours, reports from the area that security forces surrounded a building where the suspect, Muntasser Shalabi, is thought to be hiding. Although Shalabi has not yet been apprehended, witnesses say that a number of his family members, including his wife and son, were arrested in Turmus Aya, the nearby village of Akraba. Arrests were made following the discovery of the car used in the attack near the city of Nablus on Monday. According to Palestinian media, Shalabi is an American citizen. All right, let's speak to Alon Eviatar, former advisor to the coordinator of government activities in the Palestinian territories. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi.
Well, the IDF is leaving no stone unturned on the hunt for the suspect, making arrests, but they still haven't found him. From your experiences, what are the biggest challenges in situations like these?
Well, I think that in the end of the day, it could be today, it could be tomorrow, or maybe a few days, but not more of that. The IDF and the Shabak will capture the terrorist and they will put their hand on him. I don't think that this case will be the major issue for maybe it will be the major issue for the next days, but we should take a look what could be later. And I think that the main challenge is not the capture of this terrorist, but the main challenge could be for the IDF and the Shin Bet, the Shabak as well, is to prevent escalation in the West Bank. I think that the atmosphere in the West Bank during the last days is too high. There is high tension, and there are few conflicts on the ground between Israelis and Palestinians. And the main challenge or the main goal for the IDF is to prevent, I will say, escalation for other areas, districts in the West Bank, and to calm down also the atmosphere or the tension in Jerusalem district as well. So because Hamas is trying during the last, I would say, 2-3 weeks to escalate the field and the violence in West Bank and Jerusalem. And Hamas continue to try, I would say, to make the political conflict with the PA, the Palestinian Authority, higher than it was before. And I think that Israel will continue trying to calm down and to relax the issues and maybe to prevent any option for continuing of those terror cases which we have seen during the last days.
Well, authorities have speculated that this could be a lone wolf attack. Do you think that that's possible? Are we going to be seeing a wave of these coming? Is this something that's going to continue happening?
This is the $1 million question, because we don't know till now for sure if there is any instruction, if there is any order that this terrorist has got from headquarters of Hamas or Hamas cells in Shechem district. But we can assume that Hamas will try to use it for best organization inside Hamas movement and against the IDF forces to escalate the situation. I think that maybe this terrorist from Akraba village north of Nablus, maybe maybe he did this terror attack alone. But the question, or the main challenge, if you want, is if Hamas will try and succeed to organize itself to make or to continue for those terror attacks, which could be more organized and with a lot of or more participants from all of the, I would say, the districts in West Bank, not just, let's say, cases or events as we saw before.
Well, once we do find out whether or not this is actually a lone wolf attack, how will that affect the situation on the ground in the West Bank, as you say, since we're trying to brace for possible tensions?
For sure, I think that the tension on the ground is high. The tension between Israelis and Palestinians. And I think that the political atmosphere is going to be also higher during the months of May, because during May, this month, I think 2-3 weeks, we have a few memorial days like the Nakba Day, which will be at May 15. We have Jerusalem Day at May 10th. And in the end of Ramadan period, end of this month, which full of religious emotions, we have also Eid al-Fitr. It is a holiday, a Muslim holiday, and I think that we have too much days or too much memorial days that could be utilized by terror organizations and religious elements to try to continue with those terror attacks on the ground, even in Jerusalem. And I think that the main challenge for Israel is to try to prevent it.
All right,
those purposes.
Alon Aviatar, thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
Israel, it seems, is in a vortex of never-ending elections and a whirlwind of shifting alliances. One day after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced that he has failed in building a government, President Reuven Rivlin meeting today with Yair Lapid to decide whether or not he deserves a shot as well. Let's speak to Gil Hoffman, Jerusalem Post's political correspondent. Hi, Gil. Thanks for joining me.
Pleasure being with you.
So what do we know so far about what happened in that meeting today between the president and Yair Lapid?
Yair Lapid told President Rivlin that he should get the next mandate to form a government, that he would at least have the support of the 45 members of Knesset who supported him before. And then Rivlin apparently asked him questions about Bennett and how the agreement with him would work out.
So part of that plan that Lapid presented to Rivlin is to share the prime minister role with Naftali Bennett. Did Rivlin meet with Bennett as well? And what are the chances Bennett will actually wind up being prime minister according to his plan?
There had been some talk that the Likud and the ultra-Orthodox parties would recommend Bennett as well. Time will tell.
So we may actually find out this evening whether or not Rivlin will give the mandate to Yair Lapid. What are the chances we will head to a fifth election?
0.
And why do you say that?
Well, either Lapid will form a government with Bennett, which is still the most likely scenario and has been for a long time, or there's going to be a 3-week period in which anyone could form a government, in which case the 80 members of Knesset on the right would then force out Netanyahu or help him go out gracefully and enable either Bennett with the support of Likud or the Likud would have a primary to elect its prime minister. There's a lot that can be done during that 3-week period to use the current Knesset to create a stable government.
Gil, you seem quite confident that we, in fact, won't be heading to a fifth election.
It's not going to happen. The Knesset members won't let it happen after they've run 4 times. The people of Israel don't want it to happen. Netanyahu might want it to happen because he'd remain the prime minister in a transition government. But I don't know anyone else on this earth who thinks that's a good thing.
And what does this all mean for Netanyahu?
Funny you should ask. I wrote a very long analysis called Is Bibi Gone for Good? It's on the cover of today's Jerusalem Post, and The short answer is no. Netanyahu is going to be the opposition leader, and presume that this will be a short-lived government and that he can then come back. As long as Netanyahu is there, the Likud will remain under his leadership. No one would dare challenge him. And if you look at what's happened with the Republican Party of the United States, where anyone who's challenged Donald Trump has then had to backtrack, that the same would happen in Likud. There's no politician who could really force him out. His criminal cases could force him out. And so that's really the only thing. He's 71 years old, but his father died at the age of 102, and Netanyahu might be around for another 30 years.
All right, Gil Hoffman, thank you so much. We're so happy we have an expert like you to break this down for us. We'll talk to you soon. Moving along now, overnight Israeli airstrikes targeted the Syrian Mediterranean port city of Latakia, according to local Syrian media reports. While rarely admitting to airstrikes in Syria, Israel has been accused of targeting Iranian-backed militia in the country on several occasions. The Israeli military strikes launched at the city of Latakia, which is the ancestral home region of the Syrian leader and close to Russia's main military airbase. According to Syrian state media, 1 civilian was killed and 6 were injured during those strikes. This attack demonstrates Israel's so-called shadow war against Iranian-linked targets inside Syrian territory. Reports say research centers for weapons development, munitions depots, and military convoys for moving missiles from Syria to Lebanon were the focus of those strikes. And in other news, a 5th round of negotiations between Lebanon and Israel concerning disputes about the maritime border concluding yesterday with no definitive outcome. According to official Lebanese news, the round of negotiations lasted for 5 hours under the mediation of the United Nations and the United States. All talks, however, are kept in complete secrecy from the media, other than the pictures you are seeing now released by official government channels. Lebanon's president emphasized that Lebanon's desire for negotiation underlines the importance of correcting the maritime borders in accordance with international laws and regulations. Lebanon is in desperate need of the gas-rich maritime border as the country is currently struggling through its worst economic crisis in decades. As Israel slowly becomes accustomed to its new normal, in India, scenes are quite different. The country is in a dire state as its health authorities battle the most difficult wave yet of the COVID-19 pandemic. Israel began sending emergency medical aid, including badly needed oxygen equipment, to India on Tuesday to help fight the surge. The ministry said a series of flights throughout the week would carry and deliver the much-needed equipment.
During the first days of the pandemic in Israel early last year, India has sent us much-needed medical equipment, including gloves, masks, and materials for medicines. This is now a small token of friendship and reciprocity from Israel to India. Well, today we are witnessing the first medical assistance that Israel sends to India. You are witnessing now yet another milestone of the bond, the unbreakable bond between Israel and India. Israel is standing now by India and sending medical equipment, oxygen generators, and oxygen respirators.
International aid has poured into India in response to the crisis as the country's health system struggles to cope under the weight of the new COVID-19 cases, with hospitals running out of beds and oxygen machines. Now let's speak to Roni Yadija Klein, Israel's Deputy Ambassador to India. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So first of all, what exactly is Israel sending to India, and why is it so important at a time like this?
So it's sending a host of equipment. We've been able to put together an aid package of about 10 million shekels, which consists of oxygen generators, oxygen concentrators, which are the little individual machines in order to help people make oxygen, ventilators, a number of medicines, a wide variety of other medical equipment. It's all been brought together by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, headed by Foreign Minister Gabi Ashkenazi, together with other government offices and Israeli economic bodies such as the Indian-Israel Chamber of Commerce and other bodies alongside them. And it's so important because it's actually saving lives. I mean, every single ventilator and every single oxygen concentrator that we can bring saves another Indian life here because they are running out of oxygen. The hospitals are really overwhelmed by the number of patients that are trying to come in. And as I said, every single little bit helps here in order to save a life.
So you've mentioned some of the organizations, but what exactly is involved in planning this whole event logistically? How many people are involved? How long does it take to organize something like this?
Oh, well, it's really been quite a feat of planning by my colleagues at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Whether we're talking about the Economic Affairs Division headed by Yael Ravia-Tzadok and Ilan Flus, Ilan is really quite on the whole matter, or the Asian Division, which is sort of putting together the whole package. We're working together. We and they are working together with the Mishlat, which is the body in Israel which was coordinating all of the care for Israelis during the Corona crisis in Israel. And now, as one of my colleagues there was saying, we're used to receiving things and getting all the ventilators and all the oxygen machines here to help Israelis. And we're so happy that we're able to send it out now and help the world and help India specifically. There's a lot of moving pieces here and a lot of pieces of the puzzle that have to come together. We coordinate through the Indian Embassy in Tel Aviv. And as I said, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Health, there are some economic bodies which are putting together donations from various Israeli businesses and private people. Amdocs is sending about 150 ventilators, and other companies are also contributing their bit. And it's just so many moving pieces which are coming together into one beautiful picture puzzle that is coming here to help the Indians.
That's really wonderful. And of course, you know, in Israel, we are in quite a different situation now in terms of COVID-19. Can you give us an idea of what the situation is there on the ground, what it feels like in India right now with the pandemic, and what kind of practical level do you think that the equipment that Israel is sending will really help the situation over there?
Well, the situation on the ground is really quite scary, I have to say. You know, we diplomats, we're living here amongst the Indians. We don't live in a separate compound like some of the embassies do. We live in Indian neighborhoods, and we have Indians as our neighbors and friends and colleagues. And we see people and hear about people all the time who are getting sick, much more so than we had earlier in the year. Earlier in the year, and also in Israel, you know, you'd hear about someone here, someone there, but it wasn't quite as massive as it is now. Here, every day, someone that I reach out to in order to talk to them or in order to try to work with them, it turns out that they're sick. We have people calling us and asking for help in getting oxygen machines like we're bringing in today. There are WhatsApp groups in our neighborhoods of people looking for oxygen, looking for a bed in an ICU unit. These are things that hadn't happened during this whole year of the pandemic. And now they're all coming sort of to a fore and really becoming very, very frightening for people living here. Remember, we're here with small children, some of us. Our families are here with us, and we are very, very worried about what could happen to them. Most of the adult diplomats are vaccinated. Our children, however, those under the ages of 16 are not vaccinated. And so there is quite a bit of worry about them. And there's actually worry about what happens if one of us needs medical care, not just concerning COVID. You know, if someone falls and breaks his leg, what are we going to do with him? So this whole situation is quite frightening for a lot of people around here. And we're really hoping that the aid that we're bringing them will help them to overcome the crisis in the hospitals here. to make more beds available, to make more oxygen available, and perhaps to free up some of the medical staff in order to have them be able to take care of other regular medical emergencies.
All right, still, of course, a lot of questions in the air. Ms. Deputy Ambassador, thank you very much for joining me today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Moving along now. You know those lamps in cartoons that have genies inside? Well, you're not getting 3 wishes, but a temple-era bronze oil lamp was discovered during excavations in the City of David's Pilgrimage Road in Jerusalem. Israel Antiquities Authority archaeologists say that the rare bronze oil lamp, shaped like a distorted face, was intentionally deposited in order to bring good luck to the building's residents, and it dates all the way back to the Roman period. This lamp is an extremely unique find, and it's the first of its kind in Israel. For now, the lucky lamp is currently in the hands of the Israel Antiquities Authority for further research.
מאוד נדיר. בירושלים עצמה, כרגע זהו הממצא היחידי מסוגו שנחשף, ייתכן אף בארץ כולה. אני מחזיק בידי עכשיו את חצי הנר שנמצא במערך החפירה, ואני ממש סקרן לדעת אם במשך החפירה נוכל למצוא את החצי השני שחסר לנו כרגע.
Make art, not war. One ex-Israeli soldier has taken that sentiment to the next level with a new artistic medium, certainly not for the faint-hearted. Watch this.
My name is David Reutman. I'm using sniper rifle to create my art. Make art, not war.
Former Israeli army sniper David Reutman has turned his hand to action painting, but with live fire ranges as studios and guns instead of brushes to blast colors into abstract patterns.
After 20 years in service, in an active unit, everybody needs therapy. So to be honest, this is my healing by art. When I'm shooting, not on people, not in a war, not during the military service, I'm doing this for my, let's say, fun, for my way to say something to the world. It's make me feel peacefully.
Using a pistol in Israel and the cannon of a World War II-era tank in his native Ukraine, Reutman shoots into bags of paint suspended between the muzzles and wood-board canvases. Amidst the resulting splashes and holes, he intersperses letters in Hebrew, English, and Russian, seemingly at random, an invitation to the viewer to form words.
So this art is made by Jewish letters, Hebrew letters, words of peace in Hebrew, Russian, and English. And colors symbolize my feelings about the peace agreement between Jewish state and our Arab neighbors, and also symbolize my feelings about the normalizations agreement between Israel and Emirates.
20 of the unusual works have sold at between $5,000 and $10,000 apiece, he said. For Reutman, this juxtaposition is what makes his artwork unique.
And on that note, let's take a look at the weather forecast with our Chana Rifkin.
Thank you, Lauren. Now, lows this evening varying between 13 to 18 degrees Celsius, and temperature highs tomorrow getting up into the 20s and 30s, depending on the area, with partly cloudy skies. Now, back to the studio.
And now, just before we go, let's take a look at what's going viral in Israel. So what you're looking at now is 2 female Israeli soldiers having a dance-off, not between themselves, but if you look just past the fence, there are Egyptian soldiers, I believe, on the other side of that fence, and they're actually having a dance-off between them, which is some really nice cross-border camaraderie, if you ask me. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.27 shekels to the American dollar and 2.66 shekels to the Canadian dollar. And finally, for the latest updates and news from ILTV, please like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, as well as our newsletter at iltv.tv. I'm Lauren Izzo. Thank you so much for watching.